Welcome everybody to London Futurists. My name's David Wood. It's been my pleasure and privilege to chair these meetings for 11 and a half years now, shockingly. And it's great to see some new faces and some, shall I say, old faces as well. But these old faces are going to get younger as well, aren't we? If we are improving our familiar, thank you so much. That's the word I'm looking for. Great to see some unfamiliar faces and some familiar faces. And what we're here today to talk about is different ways to improve human performance. The speaker, Nick Powell, has got a fascinating background. I'm not going to try and summarize that. He may say some things about some of his past as he speaks, but he is now a professional coach, giving people advice on how to improve their performance in terms of stronger, healthier, more mentally sharp, creative, focused, and also emotionally resilient. He also describes himself as a biohacker, and he'll tell you himself what that means. And he is, of course, an author as well, and he probably will mention at some stage a chance to find out a little bit more about what he's saying by dipping into the fascinating material that's on his website and in his book. So let's welcome Nick Powell.
Thank you, David. So, I'm Nick Powell. I'm the founder of a company called Stronger Self, and I work with executives and entrepreneurs to help them improve their performance in their professional lives and also in their personal lives, really focusing on them being as strong as they possibly can physically, mentally, and emotionally. I recently launched a book named Limitless, which is all about untapping your hidden energy. And so unlocking your hidden energy and tapping into the secrets of peak performance. I was very pleased they went to #1 Amazon bestseller in both the UK and the US. And at the end of my presentation, you'll have a chance to download a copy. I'm also just about to launch a podcast called Upgraded Executive. So if you register on the website, you'll be able to be notified when that goes live later this month. I'm a certified bulletproof coach. Some of you may have heard of an organisation called Bulletproof, founded by a guy called Dave Asprey. He's also got a Human Potential Institute, part of his suite of companies, and I certified as a bulletproof coach in 2017. I spent probably the last 18 years working in more of a sort of corporate environment, running business transformation programs. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really specialized in this coaching practice, really focusing on, biohacking, neuroscience, energy management, to really help people become physically, mentally, and emotionally stronger. So, format for today is, I'm going to take you through some slides for about 30 minutes. We'll then open the floor to some Q&A, and you can ask me anything. It hasn't going to be tied specifically to the slides that I'll take you through. After the Q&A, I think we're going to go to a local pub, where if you want to ask me anything else privately, one-on-one, then feel free. So what is biohacking? Biohacking is quite, the Americans love the term biohacking because it's quite punchy. It sort of leans into the American marketing. Lots of people in Britain and Europe are quite skeptical. I think we're some kind of biological terrorist. But the way I look upon it is, it's really taking control of your performance, your health, and your energy, harnessing the intersection between biology, technology, and your environment. Okay. And for me, it's a very holistic approach. I tend to keep an open mind on everything and see what works for me. And for me, it's very much about, there is a spiritual, emotional, mental angle to it, not only the whole physical angle. And here are some of the kind of things that I tend to work with my clients on. And I think the upside here is that you end up with a lot more energy, you perform a lot better, and hopefully you'll have a much longer longevity too. So, why is biohacking the future of human performance? Well, it's been proven now that you can reverse some chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and MS helps you to avoid chronic diseases. You can boost your cognition and also give yourself incredible levels of energy when you want them on demand. You can eliminate stress completely. You can improve your working memory, become really present in the moment when you're with your family or friends, and tap into your intuition rather than living in your head constantly. You can also now start to regenerate the human body and reverse aging with things like stem cells, and also you start to create stronger relationships in your life because you have more positive energy, you're channeling that in the right way, you're being present with people, and therefore people start noticing the difference in you, not only physically but also how you come across. Now it's a massively growing movement. As you can see, I'm not going to read out all of these stats, but sort of key areas in the biohacking space are going to grow massively in the next 3, 4, 5 years. You know, the world's billionaires are pumping billions and billions into anti-aging. You know,
It's because they're all middle-aged.
well, it's an interesting thing that happens, I think, when people reach the middle ages. They start questioning their mortality, and therefore they're doing everything they can because they have the money to try and extend the human lifespan. And this one here from Juviescence is really interesting. They've raised 165 million to look at how they extend the human lifespan to 150 years. You've now got people like Dave Asprey, Peter Diamandis, Dan Sullivan, Tony Robbins, all publicly saying they're going to live well into their hundreds.
Ray Kurzweil.
Ray Kurzweil can go in there. And I think, you know, the argument from them is if you can live for the next 40 years, you can probably live for the next 100 years. Because technology is going so quickly. So what I'm going to take you through is a number of biohacks that I've either had direct experience of myself or I think are sort of coming in the future. Some of these things will be very accessible, okay? Some of these things will be sort of probably out of the price range of most people, but it'll give you an idea of what's coming in the future. So I think gentleman up there mentioned the Oura Ring earlier. So the Oura Ring, I think, is probably the most advanced sleep tracker on the market, shy of wearing an EEG helmet to bed every night. And, you know, your other half's not going to welcome you falling into bed, and it's going to be so big you'd never be able to sleep. But what the Oura Ring does, because it's quite small, it tracks your light sleep, your deep sleep. It tracks your dream sleep. It tracks when you're awake. It tracks your body temperature. It tracks your respiration rate. How it does that from a ring, I don't know, but. It also tracks your heart rate variability, which is a key sign of how stressed you are. And when you wake up in the morning, it gives you a readiness score. So how ready are you for a full-on day? And when I run my coaching programs with my clients, I make sure everyone has one of these rings when they join, because it's transformational in terms of giving you the data points to improve your sleep. Okay. When I first had the Oura Ring, my deep sleep scores were about 20 minutes a night. It should be more like 90. I did everything I possibly could to try and take supplements, pills, not eating, not exercising more, anything to try and improve my deep sleep scores, because that's the most restorative sleep. The one thing that worked for me in the end was turning down the LED lights at night in my house, because that was sending signal to my brain via the blue light that it was midday, not 9 at night. As soon as I started turning the lights down, my deep sleep scores went from 20 minutes to 40 to an hour 20. So by having something as sophisticated as this and tracking the data points, you've then got the data that you can make data-enabled decisions on. And they're not very expensive either. They're about 280 euros, I think. Sorry?
$300 with $50 off today.
There you go. Special sale on today. I didn't know that. One thing I would say though is, and I think this is a really important point for me personally, the products you'll see me bring up here, I've got no commercial relationship with in terms of recommending these products to you. They do give me discounts when I provide them to my clients, but that's only because I buy in volume. We make sure you get a copy of these slides, and none of these links are affiliate-based links. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. I'm putting these products up here because I know they work and I really believe in them. Okay, hack number 2. So never have a hangover ever again. Now this causes a lot of interest with lots of people that drink alcohol. Okay, because I promise you, it really does work. Okay, so if you're drinking alcohol, it's going to take away from your performance next day, absolutely. Unless you do 3 things. You try and stay away from beer and red wine, because what tends to give you the hangover is not so much the alcohol, but it's the toxin load in the alcohol. So staying away from high toxin alcohols like beer and red wine will really help. And when you do drink, try and stay to white spirits, white wine, sparkling wine, and after every drink, take something called activated charcoal. You can buy that from Holland and Barrett, and what that does is it binds all of the toxins to the charcoal, and it just passes through you naturally. The next trick then is that when you finish drinking in the evening, take liposomal glutathione before you go to bed. What glutathione is the body's master antioxidant, and it's what your liver uses to process alcohol. So if you load your liver up with glutathione the night before, that will process the booze and the toxins, and you'll wake up in the morning with no hangover. Now, if you go out and drink 4 bottles of wine and 5 beers, it's not going to be quite as effective. But if you're drinking a moderate amount, then I promise you, you will not get a hangover. This product, liposomal glutathione, you'd probably have to buy it off Amazon or somewhere else online. If you try and go into Holland Barrett, say, they'll sell you normal glutathione, which gets destroyed by your gut acid. So you're paying £20 for a supplement that will do absolutely no good.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Sorry?
It's easier just not to drink.
Well, I think that you've got a really good point, but I think that the British culture in particular is such a boozy culture that people want to be able to go out and then be able to perform the next day without having to have the hangover.
Honestly, this sounds like a great recipe for an alcoholic, because alcoholics, the ones I know, are always looking for something that will make it fine for them to drink.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think it's also
Yeah, it was.
jobs. I mean, it's easy to say that, but if you're in a job where the culture of the job in order to try and get clients is very much an alcoholic sort of environment, and most of the city is, whether people like it or not, it's a fact.
Yeah.
You're going to have to drink, but you're also going to have to perform the next day, so I think this is ideal.
We can have a Q&A on this a bit later, because I think the plan is to move us. I won't take too many questions in between, because we might get stuck, but I'm happy to flick back on the slides later. Number 3, this is a service called Viome, and what this is, it's gut microbiome testing, and this is pretty revolutionary. It's company's founded by Naveen Jain, Naveen Jain. He's Indian. He's of Indian descent. The classic story of rags to riches, where he went to America, made his billions. He has 2 missions in the world: one to make illness a choice, and second one to fix the education system. So he's launched this service called Viome, where you send them a sample of your stool. Not nice, I know, but send it off to America. They analyze the stool to identify all the microbes in your stomach and how those microbes interact. Okay. What they're then able to do is to not only tell you the health of your gut, but also give you a list of foods that you should be eating, foods you should be avoiding, and those foods that sit in the middle with doses. When my clients take Viome and start eating based on the recommendations, they feel that energy levels go through the roof, because they're eating what their gut responds to best. And I think Viome is not very expensive. I think at the moment it's about $250, I think. Takes about 8 weeks, but it's probably one of the first services that gives you a much different view on your health and how you're performing based on the gut. You know, they've proven now that all chronic diseases start in the gut in some way, and your gut's responsible for producing hormones. So if you have ambitions to live a long time, or you want to improve your performance, really focusing on the health of your gut is critically important. Incidentally, Naveen has said publicly that when he can get this service down to $10 a pop, he's going to make it free. Because I think his mission truly is to make illness a choice. So I definitely recommend you check out Viome. Next one of my favourites. Are there any meditators in the room? That's good. Wonderful. Now, this isn't meditation. And it doesn't replace meditation in any way. I use this device in conjunction with a daily meditation practice. But what HRV training is, and what HRV is in particular is the distance between your heartbeats, okay? So if your heart is, so say you have a heartbeat of 60 beats a minute, to keep it simple, your heart's beating every single second, you have low heart rate variability, because there's not a difference between the beats. If you've got variability in your heartbeats, so it's going, 0.9, 0.98, 1.2, and it's variability in your heart rate that averages out to 60 beats, then that's what they call a high HRV, okay? What you ideally want is, when you've got a high HRV, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are aligned, you're calm, you're present, you're relaxed. When you've got a low HRV, you've been triggered, so you've activated your freeze, fight, or flight response. Okay. And what the inner balance does is, I've got one here actually. It's a device that you can clip on your ear and plug it into your phone. And what this does is it allows you to measure your HRV, and then via an app, you can then do breathing techniques and also positive thought to actually increase your HRV, okay? And after using the app for about 6 weeks, you can then start to do that on demand when you want. So if you get triggered by somebody in work, or you feel nervous before a big presentation in the office, or anything in life where you feel like you've activated that freeze, fight, or flight response, or you're feeling an element of stress, you can then go back to the activity, the breathing and the thought pattern around heart math, and actually start to increase your HRV in the moment. If people want to try this later, then I'm happy to let them have a go.
Decrease HRV.
Sorry, increase HRV. So what we want is you want the variability. So the top one where there's no variability is where you're stressed. Where you're relaxed is where you've got a high HRV. It's the distance between your heartbeats. Yeah, I think that's the important factor.
One thing, I use that device. One thing is curious is the application, or my application has something like, you can know how many people are connected in real time, at the same time. And the device tells you where is the mood of the country, of the city, and how stressful is everybody or no. And it's curious because you can see for the news that it's affecting people.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder how it is with Brexit at the moment.
Moving quickly on.
Okay, so binaural beats. So if you are looking to get yourself into either a more focused state, or you're looking to get yourself into more of a state that's ready for bed, you can listen to what they call binaural beats. There's playlists on Spotify for different purposes. If you listen to music with headphones, or beats with headphones, one headphone has one beat, the other headphone has a slightly different beat, and then it scrambles your brain. So your brain then creates what it calls a binaural beat, and then depending on the difference, that will be of a certain hertz, and it forces your brain into that brainwave. Okay, so it helps ease your brain either into an alpha state or a theta state. I've known people who've had great results with binaural beats, particularly from the point of view of when they're working, being able to focus by actually having the beat around 7 hertz, which is the boundary between alpha and theta, which is known as the flow state. So there's a link there to Spotify, so try that out. Now this is something that is not particularly accessible now due to cost. But it's certainly becoming one of the big areas around human optimization and performance, and it's doing neurofeedback training. Now there are some places that do it in London. They're nowhere as sophisticated as Biocybernaut, and also 40 years of Zen. That's me in California in 2017 trying out 40 years of Zen, where they claim that in 5 days they can program your brain so you have a brain that's the same as a Zen master that's taken 40 years. Now there's going to be an element of marketing in there, but they can definitely teach your brain how to get into an alpha state, which is that creative, intuitive state where you find yourself in a light meditation. Biocybernaut also have a place in Germany, and for those of you that know Tony Robbins, that quote saying it's one of the most transformational things he's ever done, you know, coming from Tony, that's quite a big statement. Now, whether he's investing in Biocybernaut, who knows, but, and then the other one then, you've got Vishen Lakhani, who's the founder of Mind Valley, has been through 40 years of Zen, and I know a lot of the top CEOs in the world are now going to 40 years of Zen. It's $15,000 for 5 days, so it's not cheap, but people are seeing some incredible performance improvements off the back of it.
So what's the impact of the CEOs that go to these functions to their corporations? They're tracking any sort of correlation between companies got better or worse or whatever?
I don't think they've got that advanced at this stage. I mean, they absolutely should be, because then from a marketing point of view, that would be gold dust. But I'm not sure they're actually tracking the people that go through and how the company then performs. Absolutely, yeah. So this is one that's always a bit controversial, and it's around smart drugs and nootropics. Okay. Now, how I define smart drug and nootropic, it is something that you can take that gives you a cognitive boost, that can help you focus, that can help you be more creative. These are all smart drugs that I've used personally, okay, apart from the bottom one, which I'll tell you about in a second. And what you find increasingly now is that, you know, in executive functions where they're looking for that extra boost, they are definitely experimenting with smart drugs. Also, from a student point of view, 1 in 4 students now in Oxford and Cambridge are taking modafinil, which is that one here. Okay, it's a prescription-only drug that is commonly prescribed for narcolepsy. It gives crazy amounts of focus and enables the students to learn much, much faster. And there's a lot of debate in the media around, is it a good thing, is it a bad thing? But I think what we're going to see is the use of smart drugs and nootropics become bigger and bigger and bigger, particularly as people are looking for that cognitive edge. And I think it's sort of summed up really by, you know, the Imperial College of London are currently performing a study on microdosing of LSD. You know, that's been in press from Silicon Valley and what the execs are doing out there, but for a university to pick up the study is quite incredible. Now, I don't think we'll ever see LSD being freely available in microdoses, but you never know. This is something that you can all do this afternoon if you wanted to. This is a really, really powerful hack and something that I do on a regular basis. So it's called floatation therapy or sensory deprivation. So you float in a tank like this, okay? You close the lid down, they turn off the lights, they turn off the music, so you can't feel anything because you're floating. You can't see anything, you can't hear anything. It's just you and your mind for 1 hour. And it's an incredible experience because you feel yourself, you feel your brain dropping down the brain waves from beta to alpha to theta. And whenever I go into a flotation tank, I spend the first 20 minutes just doing a very light meditation. The next 20, my brain's just solving problems like crazy. It's like solving problems. And then the last 20, it just goes silent. And I'm desperately trying to keep on thinking, I'm having really good ideas, really good. And it's just like my brain just goes, no, I'm turning off. And it's the most incredible experience because you come out and you don't feel stressed. You feel calm, you feel logical. You do feel a little bit, I wouldn't say high is the wrong word, but I've got on the wrong train and on the wrong tube because you're just a bit like, oh, the sky's nice. It's a really remarkable experience, and Floatworks have got a place now in Vauxhall and Angel, and I'd really recommend you try it out because not only does it help from a sort of a de-stressing point of view, but also you can feel when you float, you feel all the aches and pains in your back and your knees and your feet just sort of dissipating as you're being suspended by the water. So it's really good from a physical and mental point of view.
So one would say it's like a little bit like daydreaming.
Yeah, I'd say it's really, the last 20 minutes for me is really interesting, and it proves we've got multiple sides to our brain that continue talking, because I'm desperately trying to think, I'm solving great problems, I want to solve more. My brain goes, no, you're being quiet. And until they put the lights back on, it's not until I snap out of that state. So I think what my brain is doing is it's falling into what they call a theta state, which is almost like a sleep state. But you know when you're drifting off to sleep, you can feel yourself, you're drifting off to sleep, but you're aware. It's that kind of feeling. Now, in terms of in the future, the two big things that are coming down the track quite quickly is, first one is stem cells. Well, stem cells were quite controversial going back maybe 5 or 10 years ago, where they were harvesting stem cells from placentas from babies or even unborn babies, then injecting those into people. Now they're able to harvest the stem cells from your own body and inject those stem cells into anywhere in your body where you have an injury to try and regenerate that part of your body. Now people are having stem cells injected into the livers, into the bloodstream, into their brains, into the penis. Well, I feel like they were when they were 21, I guess. And the stem cell market is going to grow in the next few years to a $270 billion market. The interesting thing with stem cells already is that in the US it's cheaper to have stem cell therapy on your knee than have a knee replacement surgery. And the aim here from a guy called Dr. Harry Ellison is to have stem cell therapy in every single town in the US. The next one is CRISPR, which is genetic engineering. So this is highly controversial and very regulated, but this is going to be able to edit genes in the future, which can then take out genetic conditions from unborn babies, or also create highly targeted treatments for cancer. Now, CRISPR has CRISPR is quite dangerous in some ways because it's the opportunity to start creating superhumans. You start editing not only the genes for that say cause chronic disease, but actually they could then start editing genes that make people bigger, taller, stronger, faster, smarter. And that's certainly one to watch over the next 4 to 5 years. So coming towards the end now, there's a whole bunch of stuff I haven't covered, okay? And if I'd stood here and talked to you on everything in depth, we probably need at least a day or two. But all of these topics are covered in my book, and this isn't a push to sell my book, and you'll see why in a second. The reason why I put these up here is that if you've got any questions in the Q&A section covering these or anything else, then I'm happy to take them. So just to get you thinking, really, okay? So let's go on to Q&A.
Yeah, many thanks, Nick. So what's the evidence that these things have a long-term positive impact rather than just making people feel good? There's nothing wrong particularly with making people feel good, but that after a while, if you change your diet as a result of some analysis of your biome, what's the evidence that maybe in 6 months or a year later you are actually healthier rather than just having changed things?
I think you have to take multiple data points. So taking the example of, say, biome, you test biome every 12 months. So I test every 12 months so I can see the change in my gut microbiome based on biome's recommendations. Similarly with blood work, I have blood work done every 6 months so I can track my key biomarkers. You know, I can track my sleep based on my ring. So I think it's not only feeling good in the moment, it's also having the data points so over time you truly know that things are improving.
Well, for
Wendy?
one person, but I mean, that's not how we do medical testing in general.
Yeah.
You would be a data point.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the point around biohacking too is that everybody has to be their own individual data points. And I think it's one of the things that I emphasize to everybody is what will work for me will not necessarily work for you. You have to find the things that really make a shift in how you feel and how you perform. So if I give you one example, who here eats tomatoes? Tomatoes are a superfood, right? Yeah? People feel good. When I eat tomatoes, I bloat horrendously because I'm lectin sensitive. So if I eat anything from the nightshade family, it gives me issues. But that's something very specific to me. And I think we're all biologically very different, and we respond better to different things. That's why I think it's N=1. And I think you have to find out the things that work for you.
But aren't there risks there? It might be that there's a treatment that works for some people and doesn't do much for others, but there's a minority for which that treatment might cause even worse than the lectin intolerance that you mentioned.
Well, I think that's why anything that's termed a treatment has to go through very stringent medical testing.
Right, but then you're back to random controlled trials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of this, if I may respond to that later.
Please do, yeah.
Question. You know, if you look at the microbiome research, there are loads and loads and loads of studies correlating, you know, this bacteria in your gut is associated with anxiety or with rheumatoid arthritis. So the studies are there, and the same applies to all the other things that Nick has, you know.
I think the challenge with science at the moment is on the number of topics is polarized. Yeah, and you've got, you know, I watched a really interesting debate between two doctors talking about veganism versus the paleo diet. And all they did for an hour and a half was throw scientific papers at each other. This paper says this, and this paper says this, and this paper says this, this paper says this. Then at the end, really frustrating conversation, they agreed that 90% of your plate should be vegetables, and that you should avoid processed foods and dairy. So they're arguing a toss on the last 10%, which is pointless. So and I think, and there's lots of things in science where it's really polarized.
And this is one that comes to me because I have some friends who are very strong advocates of a paleo style diet, and others who are very strong advocates of a much more vegetable based or even vegan.
Yeah.
And they feel it makes more than just a 10% difference. They feel it's much more significant than that.
And that's why I don't advocate any diet to my clients. I say to them, eat what makes you feel great. Start meditating, start getting in touch with your body because you've lost that ability. Start noticing how you feel after you eat. Start weighing yourself every day. So if you've got inflammation, you can think back, what did I eat yesterday? Yeah. And by really getting in touch with how you feel, you will start to identify those foods that give you the energy and the foods that take it away. And then a service like Viome will help get you there a little bit faster.
I saw some hands at the back, yeah.
Yeah. Could you recommend us some sources, as there's a lot of noise, and how do you find them, and how do you questions? Is there any generic explanation of what is transhumanism, and your definition, your explanations, that would be timeless and that we would always historically would be able to go back to them? And the second one is, how do we get actualized within the development of these ideas and these technologies and processes?
So you're asking about sources for
basic learning, timeless
information
learning, and actualized sources in terms of news.
I think the challenge is it's never going to be timeless, because I think that science is always developing. Science is also catching up with a number of things that the Eastern world has known for centuries. Yeah. So the world is always going. I mean, the thing that I love about this whole domain is that it's constantly evolving. It's constantly changing. You know, you can see some of the stats that I put up. The growth of integrating biology and technology is just exploding. And I think one of the things I would say as a piece of advice is you're always going to get this polarized view, right? Okay, which is right and which is wrong. Just follow your heart and just go with the thing that you feel or resonates with you most, and just try and keep an open mind on everything. You know, the big thing that's a polarizing view is EMFs. Do they do harm to the body or not? Okay.
electromagnetic fields,
Yeah,
like
fields.
from a Wi-Fi router or from your mobile phone, and
You know,
wireless masts.
I'm the biggest technology geek fan out there. Okay, I've got a house full of Wi-Fi and IoT devices. I don't know what to believe, so I'm keeping a very open mind between the scientists that are saying they're harmless and the scientists that say that in 20 or 30 years that they could harm us. So I just take the middle ground and try and put myself in the best possible position where I'm not overexposed.
Question at the back?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the genome coding and the practical implications of that. You just mentioned that, but much like bio, but
Yeah. I think one of the things that is going to be quite, and I'm hoping Viome do in the future, is taking the genome. So taking your genome sequencing, taking Viome, taking bloods, taking data from any other biofeedback devices, and using that as a more holistic view on what's going on. I think particularly with the genome point of view, I'm always careful with people because they can go looking for problems. Okay, so they'll go out, they'll buy something from say 23andMe, it might not be terribly accurate, who knows. They then find that they've got the Alzheimer's gene, and then they start panicking. But because of epigenetics, it's the environment around us that has the potential to trigger that gene. So just because your genetics are pointing towards something doesn't mean that that's going to manifest itself. If you can live a very healthy life and try not to expose yourself to too much environmental toxins, there's a chance those genes may not even activate. But I think it's really interesting being able to combine the genome with things like Viome and bloods and other data points.
but can your thought process be also be applied to bio the same way? Can you actually be sure that what it tells you is like?
Well, I think with all of these services, particularly something like Viome, which is fairly new, it's been in the market 2 years, and I've seen Viome evolve from where I think that some of the results weren't particularly accurate, but now I think they've now got 2 million tests done, so they've got that data set. I think whether it's Viome or whether it's say your Aura ring, here's an interesting one. My readiness for this morning was 86%. When I woke up this morning, I didn't feel great. So how I felt didn't really correlate with what the ring told me. It does most of the time. I think that's why anything you do, you have to think about how do I feel aligned with the data points that I'm getting. So I don't think it's one or the other, it has to be both.
Some people might say that telling patients to trust their feelings might be misleading, because sometimes you've got to take some quite nasty medicine in some cases before you can recover. And if somebody then says, well, I don't like these pink tablets because they make me dizzy, because there is a side effect, might then unwisely stop taking a treatment which actually needs to put them in a bad state before it cures them.
Yeah.
I think you've always got to take your doctor's advice. Yeah, I think that is fundamentally important. You know, I think one of the issues we have in this in the UK, and I think in the States too, is that GPs have so little time with their patients, and you know, I think, and it's not their fault. It's the fact they've got a really heavy workload. I mean, if you've got something that is some kind of condition, I always recommend to people to try and work with a functional medical doctor who can identify the root cause. So that maybe you're taking medication to alleviate the condition, but maybe there is something else that you could be doing that is maybe more lifestyle based or more natural.
How do you find these functional doctors?
Institute for Functional Medicine.
There's something called the Institute for Functional Medicine.
Yeah.
Because we all love the NHS, but there are certainly lots of horror stories about doctors being too rushed and too tired and not doing a wide range of tests and then giving bad advice. I think this comes back to the question from the person in the back. He said, what is the reliable sources? And you're saying, well, there isn't any really reliable source, but it is very hard for each of us to know what to think in these cases. So your advice to us is we have to do our own research.
You've got to. I mean, I have a client that came to see me yesterday, where he's got diabetes, he's got chronic low energy, and the doctors can't work out why he's got low energy. He's had cameras down his throat, he's had cameras up his backside, he's had blood work done. They can't work out what is wrong, okay? Because all his bloods are in the normal range. So when he showed me his blood work, I said to him, ask your doctor about your B12 levels, because his B12 levels are in the normal range, but they're really, really low. And, you know, unfortunately for the GPs, they're so busy, they go, it's in a normal range, so you're fine. Yeah, and it could well be that it's not the B12. But if he can go to the doctor and try and get his B12 levels up, it might do him some good. And I think, unfortunately, unless you go to a functional medical doctor, or you do your own research and present that to your GP and say, is this something sensible, you can end up probably taking medication constantly.
Question at the back there, yes?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've been monitoring yourself for a period of time. Can you explain how long you've been monitoring? Where you started and where you are now? What do you think the benefits have been to you personally over your monitoring and thinking about wanting to improve or what you improve?
It's a good question. I think I'll start with by saying that for me it's a journey that never ends. I think there's always something that I can be doing to incrementally improve myself physically, mentally, emotionally. Probably 3.5 years ago, so my story into finding this world was I was probably 38. I was probably 21 stone, feeling that I was really successful at work, but I was getting to the weekend and just crawling through the weekend. Okay, wasn't particularly present with my family. I was drinking far too much because of stress, and I had a great life, and people thought I was really successful. And I just thought, well, I'm coming up 40. This is how I'm meant to feel. And then I started intermittent fasting and trying some supplements. I lost 3 stone in 3 months. And then started really then from that point, I wish I'd started tracking things back then, but I only started tracking it now, where, so for probably the last 2.5 years I've been tracking using Aura, Biome, blood work. You know, I'm a classic example of, you know, I did my 23andMe back then. I found out that I don't process vitamin B12 well or recycle it well. I had a blood test done and my B12 was low. The doctor sent me packing saying you're in the normal range. I then went privately and had some vitamin B12 jabs and felt amazing after it. I felt like my energy levels were here and they went there. Mm-hmm. Because we all walk around thinking, this is our norm, and until somebody shows you something else and opens a door and you feel differently, we're all walking around thinking, oh, this is how I should be feeling. So I'm tracking data points around my biome, my aura ring, my bloods. Is there anything else I'm tracking? My DNA is not going to change. But those are probably the key three things that I track on a regular basis to see a demonstrable improvement on.
What about what you think you're going to be doing in the next 2-3 years?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what I'd like to try and do myself is to do a lot more cognitive-based testing and see how I can improve my cognition and working memory. I also think that I want to go deeper into my blood work too, because at the moment the bloods that I'm doing are sort of, I'd say, a sort of intermediate type level. And I think for me, probably going forward, I think the things that I'd like to probably, the two big things I would like to do in the next 5 years, one is stem cell therapy, and secondly is to do 40 years of Zen, which is the neurofeedback training, and actually use that as a mechanism to really understand how well is my brain working.
People are complicated and there are many issues. How can you figure out what actually is making the difference out of all the different things you've been doing, and how can you draw from that advice to others?
I think one of the things is I just want to clarify, because I think it's an important point. Personally, I do not diagnose or treat diseases in any way, okay? I work with a functional medical doctor or a GP that gives them the medical advice. So if I have a client that wants to start fasting, I point them towards their GP, they check with the GP, if they want to do fasting. So I think that's probably an important distinction to make at the outset. But I think it's about people starting, when you go on this kind of journey, and I don't talk to clients specifically about health. I talk to them about their performance and their performance in their personal life, in their professional life. I've seen people in a very short space of time repair broken relationships, earn an extra £100,000 a year. Their startup starts to excel all of a sudden because they're making the right decisions. They're starting to think creatively. They can start to focus. They're starting to sort of like physically, mentally, emotionally be in such a great place that things just start happening. So one of the things, David, that I do with my clients is that I've got a peak performance assessment that covers multiple areas of their lives. They score themselves on that assessment every six weeks, so they can start to see the progression they're making. And yes, it's a point in time and it's fairly subjective, but at least gives them the, one of the things I always find with people is they're always looking out to the future, but never look how far they've actually come. And that kind of assessment enables people to say, from my personal relationships point of view, I was a 2 and now I feel like I'm a 6 or a 7. And that enables them to feel, okay, I think I have made progress in those key areas.
Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, it's regarding the evidence that you touched. Does your book go for small biomarkers or something more evident as opposed to just I feel good, I feel great, I feel here and there? It's more technical on that.
It does, yeah. There's a whole chapter dedicated to biomarkers that you can monitor yourself.
Just explain what a biomarker is for people who are not sure.
So, I guess in the most typical sense, a biomarker can be something biological that you can measure. So, for instance, you could be measuring your vitamin D levels, or your vitamin B12 levels, or your C-reactive protein, which is a measure of inflammation, or your cholesterol, or you could be measuring your waist-height ratio, or you could be measuring your microbiome results. All of those things are all covered in a chapter in the book, along with some of the most common things that people test in terms of their blood work.
And the more controversial thing is knowing which of these biomarkers actually are truly significant. People have argued about different levels of cholesterol over the years,
and that debate is still raging now. I think that's where working with a functional medical doctor can help you interpret those results in a I wouldn't say in an unconventional way, but more of a root cause medicine.
And are these functional doctors expensive?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this isn't something to be undertaken lightly.
I mean, I think if you have an underlying medical condition, okay, and you're not happy with the level of medication that you're on, seeking out a qualified, doctor who happens to specialise in functional medicine, it could be an investment that's worthwhile making for your longer term health and performance. I think, unfortunately, taking things like type 2 diabetes is now costing the NHS £8 billion a year, and it's a lifestyle issue. So I think that working with a functional medical doctor can really help people who've got those chronic conditions they want to try and resolve in a different kind of way.
Natalie?
When you refer to blood work, what blood work are you referring to, and where would you go to get that blood work done?
So you can go to your GP. That's probably the place to start. If you didn't want to go to your GP, there are a number of places online now. There's one called Thriver, where you can have some blood work done by a Thriver. They'll either send a nurse to your house, or they will send a kit where you finger prick your finger, then put the blood into the test tube, and then those results are then interpreted by a doctor. So the good thing with that kind of service is it's like going to a GP but not going to a GP.
Christian?
I like what you're saying, however, is that dealing with symptoms is not the root cause. And my question would be, what would be the impact of work environment to a person's symptoms, if any?
I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I don't really have a view on working on people's symptoms. The only thing that I suggest to my clients is if they have some kind of underlying condition, they want to try and address the root cause by.
What I'm saying is, if you have a toxic environment at work,
Yeah.
or you're at home, it's going to affect your health.
Oh yeah.
The question is basically, well, how big is that impact regarding either work or your environment? Because, I think your stuff's good regarding the individual, but no one stands alone.
I think it's a really good point. There's a chapter in the book all around toxins, okay, and toxins exist in our environment. Most common one is air pollution, okay, but also light can be a toxin, okay, if we get light at the wrong time of day, okay. Also, you've got things like toxic mold, where 1 in 4 people have serious issues with toxic mold. Toxic mold in your bathroom. There is quite an interesting correlation between people who have had toxic mold exposure and Lyme's disease. Okay.
Well, chronic Lyme disease, which is different. I mean, Lyme disease comes from a tick bite.
Yeah, chronic Lyme's, and also, one of the big ones is glyphosate, which is commonly called Roundup, which is sprayed on crops. That is a toxin that then enters our food system and enters our waterways. So anything that you can do in your environment to avoid toxins and then detox appropriately through exercise, saunas, those kind of things, and hydration. So you want to really try and avoid toxins and the toxins you do get exposed to and try and process out as quickly as you can.
There's also emotional toxins, aren't there? I think part of the question may be, if somebody is coming home from work and they're tired and drained, how do you know when the best advice is you should get out of that workplace and work somewhere else? And when is the best advice to strengthen their emotional resilience so they're able to deflect the toxins and go through work without it affecting them?
I think that's where something like heart rate variability heart rate variability training becomes really important. I think when we feel something emotionally, okay, we're doing it to ourselves. We're allowing ourselves to get emotionally triggered in that way, okay? So if you can build your resilience so that you don't get emotionally triggered by doing things like heart rate variability training, that's the best way that you can start to look after yourself so that the impact of others doesn't have such a great impact. I think that's where things like meditation is really, really powerful, because it starts to help you build that emotional strength.
Question here, Julie?
Hey.
I was wondering, how do you interact with your Oura ring? I mean, we know it is a device, it's a wearable. How do you interpret the measurements it gives you, and what steps do you take in order to improve whatever you need to do?
I think that's a good question, because so when I wake up in the morning after I've done my morning routine, I turn my phone on and I check my Oura scores. It's really, really simple in that it gives you an activity score, gives you a sleep score, and it gives you a readiness score. Okay. Underneath that, they've then got data points. So, for instance, if my body temperature is increasing, okay, I'll tend to take vitamin C because I might be trying to fight some kind of infection. Okay, and I personally haven't had a cold in 4 years. Because as soon as my body temperature starts going up, I take vitamin C. I spent a long time looking at my sleep and ensuring that, for me now, my sleep is an absolute priority. I will not sacrifice less than 7.5 hours of sleep every night, so I get 5 sleep cycles. And I will do everything I can to ensure that my deep sleep scores are optimized. Okay, so I won't eat too late, I won't exercise too late, I won't have caffeine after 2 o'clock. And these are just small things you can start to implement that then you start to see the progress every night. The other thing that I think for me personally that has been quite powerful with the Oura Ring is, because it knows how stressed I am when I'm sleeping. I'm the kind of person in the morning that will push. No, I work, my whole career I've worked incredibly hard. I've got a massive drive. The Oura Ring allows me to say, right, my readiness is low, or lower than it should be. So I'll take my foot off the gas that day. Maybe I won't do a workout, maybe I'll cancel 1 or 2 meetings. So I start to take control of myself, and then start to think about what do I need. So I think that's personally for me is where the Oura has been the most effective in me really thinking about how ready am I for a full-on day.
Do you trust 100% the data that comes from your Oura Ring?
I trust the trend. I don't necessarily. So if I was to compare the amount of the amount of say dream sleep I have compared to the amount of dream sleep you have, you can't compare people's metrics. You just got to look at your own and see if your own are trending in the right direction. After all, okay, it's a ring. What it can do based on your finger is quite remarkable. Okay, and the tech's incredible, but it's not like an EEG machine you'd wear on your head. Yeah, you can't sleep with that. Personally, my HRV scores on my ring are far lower than they are on a chest strap. Okay, if I wear a chest strap, the bed to measure my HRV. So what I look for on this is the trend rather than the actual metric itself. If that makes sense.
Well, won't the nootropics sort of interfere with that? Because when you take the modafinil and stuff, you stay awake longer.
Modafinil's got a 15-hour half-life, so generally people who take modafinil should be taking it in the morning, and therefore by the time you get to the evening, it doesn't keep you as awake, or you take half a dose or something.
Well, the point is good that there could be complications between the different things, and if somebody comes out of here and applies 8 different biohack methods, it's going to be hard to know which of the 8 is actually going to be significant or not. So how do you advise people to start?
You either start incrementally, or what I do is throw everything against the wall and see what sticks.
But how do you know what bits are stuck? Because if you've thrown 3 things, you don't know which of them had the...
I mean, I think if you throw everything against the wall, that's the fast track method, but then it takes time to unpick it afterwards. Yeah. So if you're looking for a quick result, throwing everything against the wall is quite effective. If you really want to really hone on a few things that make the biggest difference, then incrementally change them one by one and monitor. Sleep is the classic one where I say to people, throw everything against the wall, because it could take you months to work out, if I take magnesium before sleep, do I sleep better? If I stop drinking caffeine after 2 o'clock, do I feel better? If I stop exercising 2 hours before bed, do I feel better? It'll take so long to build up the data points on those things that for some things, a bit like food, you know, somebody mentioned earlier that they benefited from removing gluten and wheat. You know, if you can remove sugar, gluten, wheat, dairy, and grains, you can feel a hell of a lot better. But then that's quite a lot to take out of your diet at once. Yeah. So I think there's those two strategies really, either incremental or fast.
And perhaps also discussing with people as you're doing it, somebody who's also been on that same journey, so that if you're getting various kinds of unexpected things arising, they can point things out along the way.
Yeah.
You have a question there?
Yeah, you mentioned microdosing LSD. Did you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
I've never done that.
So why do people microdose LSD?
For creativity.
It's quite common in Silicon Valley, is it? And is there any real evidence that it works?
Like all these things, it's quite anecdotal, and it'll be interesting to see what the empirical.
You know, you need to study it, not just here.
And there's a website called MAPS, M-A-P-S, and that's a place where you can go and find LSD research. And there's a lot of LSD research now used in a clinical setting for things like PTSD, for things like terminal illness to help people be more, calm as they're going through that transition. So.
And as a result of what you've looked at this, do you believe that the LSD treatments of various sorts should be more widely available?
Yeah, yes, probably I do. I mean, not for myself, but yes, I think under certain controlled conditions, why would you stop using a drug that has many therapeutic benefits? Because it's non-addictive. Psychedelics are non-addictive.
Alan.
So it seems to me that quite a lot of the interest and activity that we're talking about is about trying to do science. So science tries to do careful reasoning, gather evidence, and do measurements that are reproducible and can be rigorous, can be trusted, and so on. And this is interesting because we've got some science behind a lot of things, but we're also getting a kind of a recommendation to just do your own science. And as I come from a science background, I know how easy it is to not do science well. If individuals do what they think is science, it's often easy that they're falling into the fallacies and pitfalls of bad science. Doing what feels good, doing what's not trustworthy, like why do you trust your ring 100%? Have you looked at why that should be trustworthy? So one thing that's missing is, that's normally done in science, is people formulate models to explain causal connections between what they're observing and the conjecture as to how the model might account for the results, and then they do specific measurements to investigate whether that is consistent, and so they build up confidence in the model. I don't see that there's anything so far helping us with this as individuals, or maybe there is do these functional medical doctors work with you with your data to formulate models that are specific to you, that can then be trusted for reason, can be shared with other medical experts who then give more reasoning for why they can be trusted and so on? Or is it a bit of a Wild West for individual science at the moment?
I think it's very much a Wild West for individual science, if I'm honest with you. And I think that because I think that I come from an engineering background, and I'm a massive fan and advocate of science. But when you have these sort of like massive trials, there's always anomalies. Yeah, there was always going to be data points that sit outside the core model that, if you took as sort of isolated data points, they would disprove the model. Yeah, but those are such in the minority that the majority it works for. And I think that's where some of this comes down to, is that individually what will work for one person may not work for the other, and biologically we're so complex and we're so different. it's only something like a very experienced functional medical doctor can really work out what works for you. And they run a huge amount of blood tests and hormone panels and all sorts of things to try and work out. And even then, it's trial and error. We will try this and measure those data points. Have they moved? No, we'll try this. Have they moved? And I think that when it comes to sort of root cause functional medicine, that's the only way it can really work, because it's very individual based.
Tim?
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
I find all of this persuasive, but how much of this would you say does come down to a form of placebo effect insofar as once you've decided to take control of your life, there's an element of will in there, so there's a kind of interactive relationship between the tool you're using, your will to get better, and I'm not going to call it magical thinking, it's not grossly unfair, but it's like a halfway house between the science, we talk formal science, and between magical thinking. It's something that's going on where the mind is willing itself to a degree to accommodate itself to the data points as much as the data points are telling you what's actually going on.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think there's an element to that?
I think placebo is a wonderful thing, because if somebody feels better through placebo, then fine, But I think that one of the things that I'd say is that of all the things that I've spoken about, so if you take, say, the floatation tanks, where I talk about floatation tanks in the book, I've referenced the scientific papers that talk about the benefits of floating. I do the same with the smart drugs. There's probably about 120 scientific papers referenced in throughout the whole book, and I've referenced them at the end of every chapter. And where I feel things haven't got good solid science, I call it out. So the classic one is something called cryotherapy chambers, okay, which is where athletes go into these chambers and they get cooled down to minus 110 degrees, okay. They're in all of the NFL clubs, they're in the Premiership League football clubs. They're starting to now pop up in the City of London. There's no science behind it. Absolutely no science. I can't find anything. The FDA say they're a scam, yeah, but all the football clubs and all the professional sports are using them and can see the benefits, right? So I think sometimes you've got to keep, and that could be placebo, right? But sometimes you've got to keep an open mind and just think, will science catch up? Who knows? It may well be that they just die out as a thing. I did cryotherapy in Liverpool Street and felt nothing. I walked out. But then I didn't have a sprained back or a sprained leg. So I think there is an element of placebo, but what I've tried to do is reference the science behind each of the things that I talked about in the book.
As Alan was pointing out, there's kind of two layers of science. One is when you can point out a reasonable correlation is taking place, that if you do this, then quite a number of people have this. But the second layer of science is when it actually suggests a model. Well, the reason this is happening is because there's something going on in the biological pathways, the emotional mechanisms and so on. And I'm guessing that at least some of the cases there is some theories as well as just a correlation.
Yeah.
If you look on Institute Functional Medicine website, they do have models.
There are models there as well.
And you can just download those. There's a lot of stuff
So
in
Institute
there.
for Functional Medicine.
Yes.
ifm.com, I think it is.
Ian.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, this whole thing about the quantified self, analysing data and all this kind of stuff. And what we're talking about here, and also talking about kind of the relativist nature of understanding this data in the context of the environment of workplaces and all this kind of stuff, is that, on the one hand, this is quite a mixed methodology approach in the sense that you have someone there objectively, with your functional doctor, analysing, trying to do it from an objective sense, and then you looking and observing your relationships with your environment and the people around you. And it's about trying to do that in a way that is honest, to find what's working and what's not, because there is a danger, like we're saying, of people misinterpreting, and not being able to analyse this data objectively, which could lead to misinterpretations, the consequences of that.
I think something amazing happens to, because so I think we've sort of drifted into a whole conversation that's probably more health based, okay, and treating conditions. When I work with people around their own personal performance, as soon as they clean up their diet, they start tracking their sleep, they start meditating. You know, just those three things, amazing things just are happening. Because even from the, and you know, and that those three things we all can be doing. You know, just start eating the food that you feel energizes you. Start tracking your sleep so you get good quality sleep. And start meditating so you've got more resilience and you're less prone to stress. Even just on those three things, and you know, apart from the sleep, which is the quantified piece, okay, you know, the other two aren't. But you know, but they start having massive differences on people's mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Yes, here.
University of Amsterdam and Wim Hof have started doing some work on cryotherapy, so hopefully next few years some data will come out of it. Also, Stanford's got a new lab working on hallucinogenics.
And there's a group here in London doing that as well, Imperial College, isn't it?
Prompted by, obviously, I won't say widespread, but significant still use in Silicon Valley and thereabouts, microdosing and so on.
Okay, so that you're pointing out more research is being done on various things.
There's also a meetup group in London that does quantified self,
Yes.
and they get some real interesting people around.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Dominic?
Can I ask you about potential two other areas? One, hypnosis. Two, psychoanalysis. On that point, I got interested in the psychoanalysis, the history of it, because I'm also new ideas.
Yeah.
I started writing down my dreams. Just to think about them seemed to have a lot of benefit, it improved my sleep.
Have you tried lucid dreaming?
Ish, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't quite know how to.
I mean, I've got no direct experience of hypnotherapy. I'm not a hypnotherapist, and I haven't actually recommended any clients towards hypnotherapy, so I don't really have a
I
very...
hadn't had any experience with that, but I remember I met a guy once and he said, I went to a hypnotherapist and gave him a photographic memory.
Interesting.
Well, Matthew Gosselin, who often speaks here, is very enthusiastic about the potential of hypnotherapy.
So I think
but I guess there's so many possibilities, you can't be an expert in all of them.
So hypnotherapy, okay, there's a device that I'm wearing here. Hypnotherapy is often used to try and help people with addictions, yeah, so stop smoking or maybe stop drinking quite as much, or I think that it can be very successful. This is a device called Pavlok, and what this does is it's called aversion therapy. And what it does is, if you have a habit that you want to break, what you do is you give yourself a mild electric shock by pressing that. Okay? And what that does is, over time, your subconscious starts to realize that that habit results in something that I don't like. It's not hurtful, but it's just uncomfortable. According to Pavlok, okay, 80% of people stop smoking within 5 days and are smoke-free after 6 months.
That's a good idea.
And you know, I spoke at an event, and a girl came to me afterwards and said, "Will it help me with my nail biting?" And I said, "I don't know." So she bought a Pavlok, and I saw her a week later, and she said, "Nick, it's amazing. It's the first time I can see the whites of my nails in my whole life."
How much is it?
Can you share what you're using it for yourself, or maybe it's too personal?
So I'm actually using it for nail biting, but I've bitten my nails forever.
Does that mean that the other 20% get addicted to the shock?
Maybe.
So it's like Pavlok, isn't it?
It's Pavlok, yes.
Yeah.
It's the elastic band thing.
How do you spell?
Pavlok.
Okay.
You know, and I think it's just another thing that if you've got a habit that you want to try and break and you're struggling to break it, for $200 it's worth a shot, and if not, just eBay it.
Question over here?
It was just, you're talking about the Aura Ring, and if I look at the features of the Aura Ring, it's very similar to Fitbit. But the only thing that seems to be different is Fitbit doesn't show you temperature. So is it worth, what is it, is the Oura Ring going to give you something more than Fitbit reports?
I think it's about the level of accuracy.
But if you're looking at trends, is what you said before.
Yeah, but I think it's how accurate are those trends, yeah? So what's the level of accuracy? You know, is the trend accurate? So, you know, so if the ring is, say, always 10% out for me, is it always 10% out? Or is it like 5% out and 10% and 15 and perhaps 5, so that you get this spike? What I do with any wearable tech or any service like Biome, I tend to crowdsource. Okay, so I'm a member of various biohacking networks. There's quite a large one on Facebook, which is 10,000 people. So before I jump in and try and experiment with something myself, I'll crowdsource the network and say, what is the best sleep tracker on the market that you guys think is out there now? And it's changing constantly. There's sort of headbands coming out, like cushion headbands. At the moment, I believe Aura is probably the most accurate based on what I've heard.
Do you do any do you do any examination of the or comparison of the privacy policies? Because I think actually, from what I just read about the Oura Ring, it looks like their privacy policy is maybe a bit better than Fitbit.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
But who gets the data from these things is actually really important.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's probably a big topic. I mean, we may come back to that. I want to try and get around the people who still had their hand up for a long time. Yes, you.
Yeah, what would you say is the optimal time to meditate each day?
That's a great question. I have always had a love-hate relationship with meditation. Okay, I've always gone to it as a tool when I felt overwhelmed and stressed. I've cracked that now, and I'll tell you how and why. I always recommend to people that if they're trying to install a habit like meditation, it's best to try and do it in the morning, because once you start your day, if you say, oh, I'll book a meeting room in the office, or I'll do it after the kids come, you know, after school, the day just gets ahead of you. So I always recommend to my clients to put in place a morning routine. I put meditation at the start of that morning routine. So they wake up, they might go and say, have a drink of water, have some supplements, move around a bit so they aren't sleepy, but then do their meditation. And that tends to work well for most people, in my opinion. I'm now meditating twice a day, and that's actually helped me really see the benefits of meditation and helped me instill the practice, so it's a daily practice twice a day. The second sitting is hard because you have to make time. And I'm doing something called Ziva meditation at the moment, and I find that double sitting works well for me, because the second sitting I feel the benefit more, and therefore it reinforces the habit. So in summary, I'd say the morning.
So it's less of a love-hate.
So like 20 minutes each sitting, or 10 minutes?
I do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
And it's less of a love-hate relationship now and more of a love-love relationship, or?
More of a respect for what it gives me.
Progress in meditation starts when you start meditating outside of your meditation sessions.
Yeah, you start noticing, you start walking around, you start noticing the world around you. I mean, I don't tend to listen to podcasts anymore, because I like to be present even when I'm walking. But
what did you hate about it?
I've got a really busy mind. Okay, I'm always thinking, and my mind would get in the way of this stuff to do, this stuff to do. Since I started doing some things like putting my phone on aeroplane mode until 9 o'clock in the morning, so not being distracted by work emails and messages, my brain's not as busy, and therefore sitting down and doing meditation, yet my brain still comes up with things. But I always had this drive to, you know, there's a part of me that felt it was a waste of time. A waste of time being sat here for 15 or 20 minutes, until I started doing it twice a day, and then for me personally, I started feeling the benefits, and therefore it reinforced the habit. And Dawn may have a view on this, because I know Dawn's a meditation expert.
I try to avoid the word expert. I think the best time of day to meditate is anything that the actual person is going to do that fits with them, that they will do it. But I would agree with Nick that usually before we get distracted with all the other things of the day, if we do it in the morning, any of these things, if we do it first thing in the morning, then it gets done, and then there's no excuses, or things that happen in the day.
And would you recommend, because I've got this in my as well, so would you recommend a guided meditation as opposed to just doing sort of breathing?
Start there, yeah. Start with a guided meditation. I think you can use the Headspace app for free for 30 days, and that's a great place to start. Or there's other apps called Calm and 10% Happier.
There is another meetup in London called Trans Tech. I've mentioned it a couple of times in the London Futurists meetup, in the London Futurists newsletter. Trans Tech is transformational technology, and when I've been to their meetups, they have talked about the Headspace app and various other ones as well. So it's also using technology to have a better mental flow and more joy.
Which would bring in what Nick has already talked about, which is the binaural beats.
Yes.
Because you could play some music with binaural beats, and then that helps you to get into a theta.
So various people had their hands up and haven't had a chance to ask a question. Did you have one? Yes?
Yeah. Thank you. In Prague, there's a similar space that is a beacon coffee, and in there they perform transhumanist activities, chips, implants, 3D into the body, other forms of biogenetics that exist on a regular daily basis. Is there a similar space in London that would be a co-working space, a co-living space, a squatting space, any intentional or intention community where people can go on a physical basis and learn and experiment these ideas that we present?
So there is a London Biohackers group.
But is there one specific permanent place rather than a meetup or a lecture or a university?
Well, there is a hack space, of course, which unfortunately was down until it moved from Hackney to Wembley. I mean, I ran a brain hacking group at London Hack Space, but it was quite quiet due to A, the move, and B, 2 other founders of the group have currently left. One is because of Brexit, another one is Europe. So,
so you're saying there's an opening here, so people can organise it. I was wondering if you had an answer to that, because I know you've organised them in the past. So there's nothing permanent at the time being.
no, right now we need to restart it, but Colin is actually doing quite a good advance.
Sorry?
Colin Robart, if you remember him, he's doing a very good advance with the phone BCI we have started. He's actually giving a talk at the Royal Society demonstrating the BCI. The next
Brain-computer interface.
Yes. Well, the cheapest BCI in the world, which we have made there. So his group is doing fine.
These things are quite popular in California. They're moving across the US quite quickly. Unfortunately, in Europe, we're quite far behind in terms of the technologies even available to us.
The most important transhumanist space, I'm not sure if in the world, but at least in Europe, it's based in Prague and Slovakia, and it's called Parallelipolis. It has the Institute of Cryptoanarchy inside of it, and they have the Hackers Congress, which they understand the centralized political technologies and transhumanism as a whole, right? Lecture every year there. Another important one is the Free State Project and the Portfest in New Hampshire that has the Quill, which is a co-living space, a space for 20, possibly 30 people that crypto-anarchists, transhumanists, an intention community that builds this kind of systems against the state and against the death. And a very popular one is Anarchapulco in the city of Acapulco that has around 2,000 mostly Americans, people that are flying from the US, what they call oppression, injustice, and impossibility to create new technologies also for biomedical hacking. And they decided to establish themselves in Acapulco next.
So we're talking about quite a spectrum of different activities here. And you started not talking mainly about improving personal performance, which without having too many implants. You've got wearable things, but you haven't spoken about the possibilities of implantable devices much, because you think there's a great deal that can be accomplished just by the mechanism you
I think there's a huge amount that can be accomplished before we even get into sort of technology augmentation with humans with implants. that will definitely come. I think, give it 5-10 years, I'm already seeing things in the media around, nano robots that can go through your blood vessels and things and clean up cholesterol, etc. But I think for me, from people's own personal performance, there is a huge amount they can do, even if they didn't buy any technology. Even if you just think about how you're sleeping, you start meditating, you cut out the bad food, you start doing more exercise. Even something that is quite, even something like having a cold shower in the morning will really invigorate you. Okay.
No. It'll make me mad for the rest of the day, and then I'll go to bed at night and I'll think about having to have another one tomorrow morning. No, thank you.
It takes about a week.
No.
But you really start getting invigorated. Okay. So there's lots you can do for free.
Well, it may vary from person to person. Your mileage may vary.
I'm sorry, this is like British public schools. Wasn't that how you tortured little boys, gave them cold baths?
I started taking ice baths, and it's terrible at first, but it actually does work.
And you still practicing ice baths?
Not as often as I want to, but that's more logistical.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to continue on the theme, because we're talking about a spectrum of different things that people can do. There are groups, certainly in Sweden, that have regular meetings on the bio-augmentation, the technology that can augment humans. So they are around. One of the speakers from that group spoke at my last London Futurist event, which was in July. Unfortunately, we still don't have the videos of that available, but I can send links to that as well. There is a big community in Sweden that has regular meetings that discusses this. But you're going even further, because you're talking about not just in enhancing personal, you're talking about transforming the nature of society, aren't you? You're talking about ensuring that there's more personal liberties, ensuring that some of the big forces in society are controlled. I think that's another discussion as well. Maybe we'll continue that one in the pub. Joe?
Yeah, well, just a comment regarding the cold bath. We can try the other way around, do the hot yoga, which for me is meditation, aerobic exercise, and detoxing all in one. Yes. But I just want to comment about California. You mentioned California and the self-experimenting with CRISPR. Did you see there's a law just passed because people are experimenting with CRISPR so frequently in California now? You mentioned there's a future thing, but it seems to be happening now.
I think
do you know any of those groups? Or?
I think I don't, and I would never recommend people genetically engineer themselves. Because it's dangerous. But I did see in the media that there was the first person in the States. I can't remember. I think she had sickle cell, and she's been the first sort of official CRISPR genetically edited person, and it's going to become. People might be self-experimenting. Not sure how they would even do that, but I'm not. I mean, I'm quite a cautious guy, right? I'm like, there is. To David's point, I think there's a huge amount of stuff that we can achieve before we even go to the more advanced things. And I think the more advanced things are really interesting. They're definitely the future, but I think you probably need to be working with somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. It's a bit like neurofeedback. I wouldn't do neurofeedback with anybody unless I had complete trust.
We'll take a few questions from people who haven't maybe spoken yet. Maybe there's people wondering about some topic. Yes, at the back.
Do you have any thoughts on protein-rich plasma?
Protein-rich
plasma.
Maybe you can explain what that is.
Beloved of Rafael Nadal, I believe.
Yeah,
Rafael Nadal. Tennis player?
He's had some weird things injected into his knees, platelets and things.
Yeah.
None of them known to work particularly well.
I have definitely come across it, but I've heard it spoken in the context of stem cells. So you either have the plasma spun, isn't it? It's spun and then injected, which they claim can help repair parts of your body. But I thought stem cells had almost overtaken that as a treatment. I'm not too familiar with that. I don't know a tremendous amount about stem cells. the world's best, in my opinion, the world's best stem cell doctor is in London next week, talking at the Health Optimization Summit. So hoping to learn out more then.
Maybe we should talk about the Health Optimization Summit debate. So it's nothing to do with London Futurists. It's a separate summit that's being organised. Dave Asprey, the pioneer of the whole bulletproof coffee and lots of other things, will be there. You're not speaking, Nick, but you'll be attending, yes?
What's the bulletproof coffee?
Where?
Bulletproof coffee.
Bulletproof coffee.
It was on your list, wasn't it? What's that about?
So, just a question, where is it, how can people find out about it? So we'll talk about bulletproof coffee in a minute.
I think it's the healthoptimizationsummit.com.
Or if you search for Dave Asprey London or Bulletproof Coffee London. So it's more expensive than this meeting, I have to say. Probably it's quite a lot more expensive than this meeting. It's a commercial event, but you will get lots of things to think about there.
One thing I can tell you is the Contigo mugs are actually quite good.
The Contigo mugs?
Yeah, I have one.
They enhance your personal performance?
No, they keep stuff hot really well, and
Okay.
they're designed not to leak.
So tell us about Bulletproof Coffee. You take some every day, do you, Nick?
So this was my gateway into this whole world, because I heard about Bulletproof Coffee on the Tim Ferriss podcast. Thought I'll give that a go. What it is it's a source of good, clean, quality coffee. It doesn't have to be this coffee mix from Force Sigmatic. It can be any good coffee, and I think that what you'll find is that coffee in Europe is generally pretty good. So any good quality coffee, don't use instant. A tablespoon of unsalted grass-fed butter, a tablespoon of C8 caprylic acid, which is basically a short-chain fatty acid, but it has to be C8. Don't go and get any normal MCT oil, and a mug. So you put the coffee, a tablespoon of this in the mug, lock the mug, make sure you lock it and shake it, okay? And it comes out a bit like a latte, okay? But when you have this in the morning, for most of you, it will light your brain up like you would not believe. You just feel mental clarity, you feel that you're really aware of your surroundings, you can focus, you just feel sharp. And it's all because of this.
Does anybody here take Bulletproof Coffee? Does anybody? And what's your experience of it?
I used to drink maybe 1 liter of coffee every day.
1 liter of this?
No, normal.
Normal coffee, yeah?
Nowadays, just this is a bomb. You just need that. in the
Just need
morning.
one?
Nothing.
It lights up your brain?
Yeah, it is.
Yes?
Too much sometimes.
Too much? Oh, well. Yes? So why don't we just take the C8 caprylic acid?
It's not very nice. But like, it's like taking cod liver oil or something. That's just like. So the reason that this works, okay, is that I've heard people talk about mitochondria here. So I'm sure most people know what mitochondria is, but they're the energy. They're the power plants in every single one of our cells, and there's between 1 and 2,000 in every cell. Apart from they reckon there's about 10,000 per cell in your brain. Your mitochondria make 4 times more energy off fatty acids than they do off glucose. Okay, so you feel it more. You feel more energized at a cognitive basis when you take this, which is basically a derivative of coconut oil. And you can have it in a green smoothie. You can have it over your salad at lunchtime.
Bulletproof coffee also works better if you're keto adapted. If you follow a keto diet because it's a high fat coffee, people say it makes wonders because they don't want to eat. But if you put like a tablespoon of grass-fed butter into your coffee, like there's a lot of calories, so of course you will not want to eat not so much.
Question?
A lot of people here talk about intermittent fasting. If you take that in the morning, would that be considered as breaking your fast? If you don't do dairy, then you have coconut oil instead.
You can have coconut butter, yeah. I mean, this is in effect coconut oil. So you get coconut oil, you get MCT oil, which is a derivative, and then you've got this, which is C8 caprylic acid, which is an even more refined version. Now, my take on fasting is that if you can be a purist from a fasting point of view, and if you're doing a 2 or 3 day fast, which I don't recommend people do unless you're used to fasting, then I never take a bulletproof coffee if I'm doing a 2 or 3 day fast. So I'm putting that much commitment into the fast for 3 days. I don't want to try and sort of breaking it. Every day when I do intermittent fasting, I have one of these in the morning. Because it might break my fast a little bit, but it doesn't spike my insulin. So what I really want to do is keep my insulin low throughout the whole day. So in summary, I will do this if I'm intermittent fasting, if I'm doing a 2 or 3 day fast.
How do you measure insulin?
I don't personally measure my insulin, but when you fast, your insulin drops. What I do is I measure my ketone levels in my blood. I measure my ketones so that I know how deep I am into a fast at any one point in time.
What's the significance of the butter?
The butter will help sustain you through because when I fast from 8 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock the next day, when I have a coffee at say 8, it just gives me the extra calories and sustenance to help me get through to 2 o'clock.
Dave Asprey writes about this as well, surely.
I mean, Dave has got a whole business around this because he sells the coffee, he sells that, and people go, this is a bit, is he just pushing a product? But like all these things, you've got to try it first. I mean, the other one is this that Dave sells, which is genius marketing. It's called Unfair Advantage. Okay, and this is a mitochondrial enhancer, so you feel a quiet boost of energy. I had a client come and see me yesterday, or a prospect. I gave him one of these tubes, which is an equivalent product. He sent me a text this morning saying, that stuff's amazing. Because you get this real surge of quiet, calm energy, because the CoQ10 helps the mitochondria run more effectively, and the PQQ helps grow more mitochondria, so you get this really good, nice surge of calm. It's not like caffeine, where you like wired, because you feel normal.
Right.
How come filter coffee doesn't break fast?
He said he thinks it does break the fast, yes?
So it won't have an insulin response.
Yes.
Okay, but it will technically be breaking fast. So if what you're looking for is autophagy,
Yeah.
then you ain't going to get that
Yeah.
because you've got calories.
It's the process your body. So when you start fasting, after about 14 hours, your body starts to go into a process called autophagy, where it starts cleaning up your body at a cellular level. So all the junk that's in your cells, it's taken out of the cells and using to make other cells, or it's getting rid of. So it's your body's sort of internal cleansing mechanism. And a guy, I can't remember his name, won the Nobel Prize for it about 4 years ago, a Japanese guy. So autophagy is great because that's the sort of internal cellular maintenance that you can only get if you fast for a long period of time.
So we're almost out of time. I want to go back to the question about plasma. I don't know if this is the same thing or not. We'll talk about this in a minute too. But it reminds me of another thing that people allegedly do to get more performance, which is blood transfusions from youngsters. You know, there's the famous experiments in which you surgically hook together a young mouse and an old mouse, and if you can stop them fighting, and if they can, you end up with the old mouse having lots of youthful characteristics. Its liver, its heart, even its brain is more youthful, and this has been known for quite a while. And we're not recommending that people get surgically attached to each other, but people are trying to figure out what is it that about the young blood that's important. So nowadays they repeat the experiments with plasma, and in fact they've even given plasma from young humans to old mice, so there's no surgical connection. Apparently the old mice show some characteristics of a revival. So it's not yet ready for a big time. Is this on your reading list anywhere, Nick?
Yeah, it's you can do it in South America.
South America, yes.
In the
You
US
can do it.
as well.
Sorry.
In the US as well.
There was a company, Ambrosia, doing it for a bit, but I'm not sure they're still going.
I know things like stem cells from placentas. You can only have done in South America. Still, I know you could do it in South America. I wasn't aware you could do it in the US.
And there's a new class of drugs currently on phase 3, senolytics.
The senolytics is
real
yes.
medicine.
So the company that Jeff Bezos has invested in, Unity Biotechnology, amongst others. There's more than one company that are making some real progress there to have the same effect as autophagy, perhaps, that'll help to tidy up some of the older parts of the damaged parts of the body and repair them.
Yeah, it has effect on all sorts from Alzheimer's to the whole cells.
That's here.
Stem cell therapy, there are places in Panama, in Argentina, Cuba, etc. So a lot of this work is done over there simply because of the regulatory restrictions.
But we should warn people at this stage there are lots of dodgy things that seem to happen in at least some of these stem cell therapies. There are bad examples of people being given things which weren't at all what they were led to believe.
Yeah.
So
Bypassing regulatory.
if you bypass regulatory things, you can do more innovative, but also you can do more dangerous things too.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a warning to all of this. You know, don't take any of this as gospel. You've got to do your own research. Nick researched it as carefully as he could. Do you want to have some final remarks about what this offer is, because it looks very interesting?
Yeah, so I think thank you all for attending, and as a thank you, I'd like to offer you all a free digital copy of my book, Limitless. If you go to the link and register, you can download a copy of the book. I've also got some paperbacks here, so if you wanted to buy a paperback copy, then you can. They're on Amazon for £15, but if you wanted to buy one here, then I can sell it for £10. So you've got two options. You can either buy a paperback, and you're more than welcome to download the PDF.
And you might sign a paperback?
I'm happy to sign it, yeah.
High performance signing. So, any final burning comments?
It's just a quick question about the hangover thing. So if I recommend to one of my friends who drinks heavily all the time that he does this process, will it just solve the symptoms, or will it help him in his alcoholism in some way? Will it reduce the damage his body is getting from his heavy drinking? Because of the toxins are getting built up.
I think it's going to help. The glutathione is going to help reduce any further damage.
Yeah.
I think only if he abstains from alcohol is he really going to start repairing his liver. He could look at something like milk thistle, that I know has had some good results with people with liver damage. The other thing is look at something called the Sinclair method. You know, what I'm seeing with a lot of people that I work with in the city of London is they've got a huge dependency on alcohol. Okay? They are not alcoholics, but they're very high functioning. Okay, I think it's a bigger and bigger issue that is coming up. So I've been trying to look at are there other things out there that are not well publicised that could potentially help people in the future if they work with their doctor and the doctor prescribes them something. And there's a method called the Sinclair method that is reported to help people to not give up drinking, but reduce the dependency on drink.
Would you also suggest the Powell device for reducing or getting rid of this habit?
I think what the Pavlov will help them, I mean, they have to want it, okay? Because you have to shock yourself, yeah? But I think the thing with the Sinclair method is that if you can get them to reduce their dependency on alcohol through taking a pharmaceutical, okay? I don't advocate pharma, but this sounds like it could be really effective. They'll want to reduce but not give up. If you talk to most addicts, like, I'd like, I enjoy that glass of wine or that beer, and I don't want to give it up. So if you can get them a way to reduce their dependency, that's quite a good way of them then all the time reducing the amount they're drinking, and therefore maybe they're having 3 or 4 clear days a week, and therefore then the liver starts to. The livers are amazing at fixing themselves.
Very quickly at the back, the two of you.
I was going to say there's a big trend in non-alcohol beer.
Non-alcohol beer, yes. So this will allow you to still go through the same social experiences, but with not having the alcohol damage. And final remarks at the back?
I just wanted to ask, have you tried the Powell thing for, let's say, someone healthy thinking patterns?
Yeah, if you go on the Pavlov website, there's a whole list of things that they claim that any negative behaviour, whether it's physical or mental, it can help to rewire those neural pathways in your brain. So if anyone wants to try it, they can try it together, because it's not.
So Nick spends some of his time with clients who pay a reasonable amount of money to hear the kind of information that he shared very freely with us today. So we've had great benefit from this knowledge. It's not the end, of course. We all need to keep doing our own research, but this is a fine opportunity to dig into the parts that are most interesting. It's only available for a couple of days, so it's easy to remember. It's Get Limitless at the end of his URL. And there's also a chance to join us for some informal discussion, either with non-alcoholic beer or with water or with anything else that we can find in the meeting place bar, which is a short walk from here. So we'll be gathering there after a little bit of book signing perhaps, or some informal chat. So keep your eye open on the London Futurists for more meetups. There's one that's just about to be announced for October, and we have another event coming up in November. I won't say too much about them now. Keep your eye open there, and let's give Nick a very warm thanks for sharing so much with us today.